All right. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining so promptly right after your lunch. So I'm going to begin today's session by acknowledging that I'm here on the traditional unceded territory of the Haldimand Tract, the traditional territory of the Ottawandaron, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. I encourage you to take the time to acknowledge the land you're on as well. As we move through today's session, please share your comments in the chat space and questions by using the Q&A function in the language of your choice. You can vote for questions by clicking the thumbs up function. Okay, so I think we're going to start off with a quick poll before I introduce myself. Okay, so what field or profession are you currently working in? So we have policy, HR, comms, science, digital, public safety, learning and development, or other. Okay, I see some answers coming in. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of policy and HR today. Got about 30% HR, 12% policy. See some digital, public safety, learning and development. I see a lot of others, so maybe your field or profession wasn't listed. Also, if you could switch to any job within the government of Canada for a day, what would it be? Oh, I see a high one of intelligence analyst. That does sound interesting. About 18% of participants voted for that. Creative communications officer. I think we're all drawn to the word creative there. Give us a little bit more leeway in our day-to-day. International affairs advisor, policy analyst, we're looking at 12%. Deputy minister, 4%. No one wants the top job. Space agency scientist, sounds really interesting. We see that at 9%, and others about 24%. What motivates you most in your career? So we have learning and growth opportunities, a big jump in that 43%. Making a difference in communities, 17%. Career and advancement in leadership, 12%, and work-life balance and flexibility, 30%. So all really important when we're thinking about what we're looking for in our career. Okay, so thanks for participating. I'll move right into my introduction. So I'll be moderating the session today. My name is Sabrina Freitas. I am an HR advisor at FedDev Ontario, which is a small regional development agency located in Waterloo, Ontario. I am an HR advisor, so because I work with such a small agency, I do have the opportunity to touch on very many different functions of HR, from staffing operations, labor relations, corporate HR, learning and development. So it's been a really great experience at FedDev. But to be honest, HR is something that happened by accident for me. My interests laid in political science while I was doing my undergrad, and then I did a postgrad in public service, which came with an HR or a co-op requirement, which is how I landed in HR as an HR assistant. And that was exactly what I was looking for, to be honest. Growing up, I always held client service positions. So, whether I was working at the local Dairy Queen or serving tables during my undergrad, I enjoyed client service and I excelled at it. So when I began my career in HR, the two went hand in hand, and I was able to harness those skills in a professional and corporate environment, which has been great. So I'm really excited about today's session. We're going to hear from a couple of public servants, and we're going to walk through housekeeping items and some different topics that will give you a little insight into what it means to have a career in human resources in the government of Canada. So we'll go to our agenda overview. So I'll do some housekeeping items. We're going to discuss exploring career paths in the government of Canada. What do human resource professionals do? There's a lot that goes into HR, so it's going to be really interesting to hear what a day in the life of an HR professional looks like. Some of the qualifications and competencies that you need to maybe get into a PE field or an AS field or CR, if that's something that interests you. And all while we're talking about those topics, we're going to be learning from experiences. So we're going to hear about the voices of people who are currently in HR within the Government of Canada. So housekeeping, there's not too many things to go through, but all attendee microphones and cameras will be deactivated today. The chat is disabled for attendees, but we'll use it to send some resources and some information. Please use the Q&A button to ask your questions. You can vote for a question by liking or pressing the thumbs up button. And this session today will be in English, and then there will be a French session following at 2:30 Eastern Time. And all sessions are being recorded and will be available on the Fin YouTube channel tomorrow or about 24 hours after the session. So if you feel like you've missed something or you want to revisit a topic, please check out the YouTube channel. Not just today's session, but there's a lot of great information there. Okay, so our learning objectives for today, we're going to identify a variety of career paths, specifically HR today, understand the typical responsibilities required and the day-to-day realities of professionals working in HR, understand the qualifications, experiences, competencies needed to pursue different career trajectories within the Government of Canada. This can be interesting because I think there is this assumption that HR is like staffing and recruiting, but there are so many things that go into HR. So it'll be nice to learn a little bit about that. Engage with experienced public servants to gain practical insights and perspectives on your career development and progression. And learn about networking and mentorship opportunities, which is not just important for your career in HR, but important for any path you go down as a federal public servant. So we're going to have three panelists today, Liz Bailey from Public Service Commission, Laura Reddy from Veterans Affairs Canada, and Luke Scanlon from Canadian Coast Guard. So without further ado, we'll move on to our next speaker. Take it away, Liz.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So as mentioned, I am Liz. I work with the Public Service Commission of Canada. If you aren't familiar with that department, it is okay. We are very small. There's about 800 to 900 people. In comparison, the CRA has like 20,000, something like that across Canada. So we are very tiny. A lot of people don't know who we are, but we are very important and integral to the government, especially from an HR perspective. So we are the department that safeguards hiring, basically. In a small, short summary, we also manage the GC Jobs website and the Federal Student Work Experience Program. So I'm an HR advisor there, and I work in outreach for the Atlantic region based out of Halifax. Similarly to Sabrina, I started as a student. So I actually began my career as an FSWEP student in 2017 when I was going to SMU here in Halifax. Also similar, I did not intend to go into HR until my last year of university, when I realized I needed to find a job. So I decided to take my HR management certificate through SMU while I was finishing up my psych degree. I was fortunate enough that after my FSWEP job opportunity, I was appointed as a casual and then as an indeterminate in the HR assistant role. And I continued to work there until 2021, where I got a promotion with the PSC, which is what my current role is now. So I work in the region promoting mostly the student programs and a variety of employment opportunities within the Government of Canada, which has been really cool because I work not only out of Halifax, but with all 4 Atlantic provinces. I get to meet a bunch of people. I've worked with a lot of the Fin people as well. I work with a lot of the universities, including going back to my own at SMU to talk more about the wide variety of jobs that you can find. And I've been fortunate enough to work in a few different fields of HR, so I can talk to you a little bit more about exploring those different opportunities within the HR domain. Next slide. So as mentioned, there is like this common, thought that HR is mostly staffing and recruitment. And although that's my kind of area of experience, there's so much more to these types of HR jobs within the government of Canada. It's very different from from the private sector. I'm not sure how many of you that are here today have any kind of experience with the private sector, but I used to work in like retail, and we had, HR managers at like the, higher corporate level, and what they did is really different than what a lot of us do. Some of our departments have generalists, which is kind of what you see in the private sector, but in the government, we are lucky enough to have such an expansive variety of opportunities, whether that's, the typical ones we always hear about: staffing, classification, compensation. We also have, labor relations is a really big one, but there's also, organizational design, talent and performance management, HR planning, executive services, and even within those, there's often like an operational side and then a corporate side. So if you prefer to be more hands-on, talking to managers, employees, there's a place there for you. But if you prefer to be behind the scenes, working a little bit more on like the policy side or, the advising side, there's something for everyone, which is really nice. It's also really cool that there's a lot of ways to move around as well. So all departments have multiple disciplines. Something that's actually can be really helpful if you're looking to find out like what might be in your region is finding out what departments are the most common in your region. For example, here in Nova Scotia, the three biggest are national defense, fisheries and oceans, immigration and refugee and citizenship Canada, employment and social development, CRA. Those are some of the biggest ones out here in Nova Scotia, for example. So it's safe to say that they will also have a huge HR branch. And then within that, they have multiple disciplines. The bigger the department, the more they have. So that can be really helpful if you're trying to figure out like what career path you want to go, because it is pretty neat. When I worked at Environment Canada, I learned so much about the sciences, and it was really cool to help those people. Even though I was only doing the hiring, the staffing side of it, it was really neat to kind of learn about what I could do or what everyone could do in the government as well. And it was really neat to kind of have that, specialization. Even though I wasn't specifically working in sciences, it was really neat to talk to those people and develop those posters and learn about what, other departments do for, the public in a sense. Because if you aren't aware, the Environment Canada here in Halifax is the Hurricane Center. So anytime we get hurricane information, it's coming from there, which is really cool. So it is really helpful to know like what the layout is in your specific region to kind of give you a really good sense of like what you can do. And like, maybe you enjoy a specific topic more than something else, and you're like, oh, well, I want to do HR, but I want to do it with a science department, or maybe I want to do HR and I want to do it at the CRA. There's like a lot of opportunities, as I said, because all departments have those disciplines. And it is important to note too that there's a lot of more than just the HR advisor role, HR assistants, whether that's ASs or the CR role. I started out as a CR5, which is pretty common, although it's not the only pathway to become an HR advisor. A lot of people start off in that administrative position. And I think that kind of helps you get like a big picture insight as you move through your career. So whether you're starting off as an admin person, you have the understanding of the processes and the steps and the procedures and that background. Like I've worked in my GCHR on the back end. So now I have a really good understanding of what it looks like to someone, who is just using it not as an HR person. A manager wants to know why something isn't working. And it's like, oh, it might be because something was done wrong. And, I have that knowledge in the back. And then some people might have knowledge from other disciplines. So maybe you worked as, someone in equity, diversity, and inclusion, and then you moved over to staffing. As you're creating those staffing processes, you bring this lens of equity, diversity, and inclusion to that to reduce biases and barriers, or even vice versa. Maybe you worked in staffing and now you're going into a different change management, career progression. You have that like staffing knowledge of like, okay, this is how you can get there by following the rules. So, as I said, with my experience, I have a lot of experience with staffing, and that has really allowed me to have a solid foundation for my current role in outreach and engagement, because when I talk to students who want to learn more about jobs or the public about applying to jobs, I can give them kind of that insider knowledge of what they can expect when being assessed. I can answer their questions. Why does it take so long? I can give them that because I know that there's 20 million staffing steps that happen during the assessment phase, right? And the nice thing is there's lots of movement too. So you can start in an entry level position and move up as you gain experience. You can, whether it's a deployment, moving from a PE3 to a PE3, even if they're not in the same discipline, you are still considered qualified at that level for a deployment. So there's lots of different ways that you can move around and try something new. Without having to like restart. So you can kind of have your hand in a bunch of different pots. You can have, build up your background. So it is really cool to explore like all these opportunities, and it's definitely goes beyond more than what, we typically think of, like the pay, compensation, staffing, etc. I think the next slide. I will hand it over to Laura.
Perfect. Thank you, Liz. Okay. So as mentioned, my name is Laura Reddy. I'm the manager of HR transformation at Veterans Affairs Canada, where I lead a team that's focused on innovation, continuous improvement, and transforming how we deliver our HR services. But if we do rewind just a little bit, I did start back as an FSWEP student back in 2014. I came in through FSWEP and I spent my first 4 years in centralized operations division, so more operational division here at Veterans Affairs. And I took on a wide variety of different roles, anything from ordering and scanning paper files or veteran files to using microfiche. I'm not sure if anybody has ever heard of it. Feel free to Google it. And doing a little bit of everything in between. It was a lot of learning by doing. It was very eye-opening, though, to see the real impact of the work that we do on the people that we serve. And I think that those early experiences in Centralized Operations Division, they really grounded me in Veterans Affairs Canada's purpose. During that time, I also actually got the opportunity to do a co-op placement with the IT enterprise data team. That was more on the business or project management side of things, but it did remind me just how much I've always loved tech. And that interest may have started with some glittery GIFs and customizing some Pixo and Tumblr pages and helping my older cousin build that really extra cool MySpace page. But it turns out that that was actually just the early version of learning HTML. So today that tech curiosity shows up in much more practical ways. Eventually I made the move to human resources, and that's where I really found my passion. So I started as an HR assistant, similar to Liz, and moved into an HR strategic advisor role. Then I became a team lead of the HR strategic advisors. And then now I get to lead a team that sits kind of at the intersection of my passions, HR and tech. Our work centers around continuous improvement, modernization, and making HR more accessible and effective for everyone. And I really couldn't be prouder of the work that we do. So my next slide covers the topic, what do human resource professionals do? Which, if you're tuning in as a fellow HR professional, you might be giggling and saying it might have been easier to cover what we don't do. Every day is a little bit different in the life of an HR professional. And as you see from Liz's previous slide, there are many different subfields and roles within HR. But in the interest of time, I'll do my best to give a simplified overview. So if I can summarize it here, I would probably say that HR professionals, they're a key strategic business partner that acts as a true connector between the organization and business side to their most important asset, which is their people. So we're in a bit of a unique position as HR professionals in 2025, and maybe unique might not be the best word. It sounds a little bit daunting, and I might be a little bit biased because I'm a bit nerdy, but I do think that it's a really exciting place to be. As you all know, the way we work is evolving at a faster pace than ever. Dare I mention the most talked about topic around the table these days, artificial intelligence, AI. But if anything, it's becoming increasingly evident how important it is to focus on the people aspect throughout this transformative change. And that's where HR professionals come in. So at quick glance, we know that HR covers many topics. So it covers topics like payroll, workplace safety, hiring, recruitment, retention, learning, labor relations, diversity, equity, and inclusion. There are so many different topics. You got a bit of a preview on Liz's slide. But if we dig deeper, we can really see that HR is actually a strategic partner. So we work on workforce planning, organizational design. We use data and analytics to guide informed, future-focused decisions that help our organizations to thrive. We're culture and talent leaders. So we help to build a strong, diverse, and inclusive corporate culture that prioritizes inclusion and accessibility. Part of this is actually through our recruitment efforts, and we watch workforce trends and work to ensure that the organization is able to attract, develop, and retain our top talent to ultimately carry out our organization's business functions. And finally, we're change and transformation drivers. So HR professionals are leading through this change by helping our organizations to stay agile and resilient through all of these changes. They're guiding transformation efforts, supporting digital innovation, and managing the people side of change through all of this. So in a world where connection, culture, and trust matter more than ever, HR is not really just along for the ride. We're key drivers to the organization's success. So I'll leave it with that. I'm really excited to be a part of today's conversation and to hear from other panelists and get interactive with the questions and answers. So I'll hand it over to Luke here to take you through the next slide.
Good morning. I'm based in Victoria, BC. So for me, it is morning. I work for the Canadian Coast Guard as a retention and talent development officer, and I am far out in the regions. I too, like Laura and Liz, joined as a student. I am in the second year as my role in my current position. And what can I say about the Coast Guard? I think the Coast Guard is a really fantastic place to work. I absolutely fell into my role here. I grew up in Calgary, where I had very little knowledge about the federal public service, other than I think I spent my summers working in Banff National Park. So other than really people working in the Park Service, I didn't really think working for the public service was in my future at all. And then when I moved out to Victoria to go to school, I had a co-op position with the Coast Guard. And then once I got into the Coast Guard, I realized there's actually quite a few positions out in the regions. That said, there is quite a few centered around Ottawa, but once you get in, you can see there is a lot in the regions, especially if you take advantage of the networking opportunities, the opportunities we'll talk on later in the presentation from the Federal Youth Network, and just word of mouth. There's a lot you can do in the regions as well. So yeah, if we can go to the next slide, I'm just going to be talking a little bit about the qualifications to go through your journeys under the HR paths. So there's three kind of main streams or groups to go through the HR path. So the CR, PE, and AS. So CR stands for clerical and regulatory paths. Here, the minimum requirements is just 2 years of secondary school. And typical duties among the CR is you do whatever you can to support your team. So these would include things like data entry, filing, general admin support. You do a lot of responding to inquiries. I was the equivalent of a CR when I was a summer student on my co-op. And I think it's very hard to say if I could give like one generic role of what a CR would do, because when I was as a co-op, I was doing a lot of event planning. So as a CR, I was essentially driving around the lower half of the island, setting up event booths and going on ships. So a little bit tricky to if I could give a generic CR term. The PE stands for the personal administration. So this is quite specialized. You not only need a degree from a post-secondary institution, but it also has to be relevant to the work required for the duties. So within this role, it's managerial kind of duties specific to HR. So here you would have things like you would be developing and implementing staffing processes or organizational charts. This would be the type of person who would liaison with the union reps and kind of put their word in on LR issues, administer the pay and benefits programs, and then manage learning programs. And then finally, this is where I work in my current position. We have the AS stream. So here you need a high school diploma or employer recognized alternatives. And you kind of do, if it was on the spectrum, this would kind of be in the middle. So part of the duties with an AS is you can be coordinating the CR staff. You kind of oversee the roles which the PE require you within your duties. So for example, I do a lot of work which comes down the pipeline. So I run a lot of training and events. So I put people onto training sessions to make sure that they're qualified to basically do life-saving missions. Because if we don't have enough people qualified to run the ships, things don't really go great. So AS duties in general, again, it's hard to give a really general specific term, but they do things like assisting with staffing or onboarding. They'd be supporting training and development, preparing a lot of briefing notes, writing reports or speeches, or liaisoning with internal and external stakeholders. There is a lot of that as well. I want to talk about some skills which can really, if you focus on these skills, that would bring success in these paths. So these would be things like attention to detail, organization. A big thing is confidentiality, because in any of these pathways, you are dealing with a lot of sensitive information. So you're dealing with security or people's medical information, pay. Customer service is a big thing to help excel in any of these pathways. No matter what you do, you're going to be working with people, both internally and externally. So customer service skills, communication is important. One thing I really want to talk on, though, is any of these is an excellent building block to what you want to do next. So, for example, even if you have like a degree and a master's degree, but you want to work for a specific department or a specific agency or even a specific team, and you see a CR vacancy, absolutely apply for that position. Because once you get in as a CR, you're in. And if you go in and show your work ethic and excel, you will be noticed, and it's a lot easier to transition. I had a colleague who has her master's in engineering, in mechanical engineering, and she really wanted to work in a specific department within the Coast Guard. So she applied for the CR role, and she got that position, and she was in it for a year. And then she was able to transition to work within an engineering role where she currently works, and she's quite happy there. And she really, really was happy she applied for the CR role. So just because you see the minimum requirements, remember those are the minimum, and it's absolutely can be a building block to where you want to go. I will speak as someone in the regions. French is really important too. Every agency or department should have some kind of secondary language training. So absolutely take it. I think one thing we're seeing, at least like my team is seeing personally here in Victoria, is we're quite limited by our second language ability. So if you can speak French, that is an absolute pro. So definitely take advantage of that, because as you get higher in your career, secondary language training and just the ability to speak both languages, like we are a bilingual country, that is huge. So definitely take advantage of that training if you can. Yeah, and I think with that, I think we'll hop into the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Luke, Laura, and Liz. That was really insightful. It was really nice to cover those topics, the foundations of HR, and then hear a little bit about your experiences and how you got to where you are today. So thank you everyone for using the Q&A function. We do have some questions. So what I'm going to do is read out the most popular ones, and then any of our speakers, Laura, Luke, or Liz, will jump in to answer some of those questions for you. So the first one we have is for those of us concerned to pivot to HR and would like to try out different subfields to figure out how we can contribute to the organization, how should we pitch or market ourselves to the hiring managers to land an opportunity?
That is a great question. I can give some insight. I think kind of like what Luke had mentioned with his coworker, the admin positions are like a really good way to start. if you aren't familiar with the Canada School of Public Service, that is also a really helpful place where you can take the opportunity to learn about subjects that don't necessarily touch on your current role, especially if you have like they have a lot of like 1 hour long self-paced things. Like for example, I recently started doing some like non-required CSPS trainings, and it's just an hour long where you can pick up, and there's like so many for HR. I mean, most of the HR ones are required for my position anyways, but I could go on and look at some like labor and relations stuff, look at change management stuff to kind of see, from, a training perspective, what they might be looking for. And in HR, it is important for those beyond what Luke said about the minimum requirements for the education. A lot of it is like those softer skills. So, being able to, manage people, or whether that's ability to work with others, integrity, respect, look up the Public Service Employment Act, the PSEA. That's where a lot of us need to have that knowledge. So that can help you kind of set that foundation. And then when you're going to, network or meeting with someone in HR, like you can say, oh yeah, like I've actually like browsed the PSEA, or, I read on the CSPS training about labor and relations, and I have like a better understanding, and this really interests me. And then highlight, the skills that you have that can relate to the job as well. So like I said, those softer skills of, even if you just want to go onto the GC Jobs website and look at a poster and look at those requirements for those jobs, can be really helpful too, to see what you already have and what you're missing. Because like I said, a lot of those, whether it's management experience, if you have management experience, a lot of that is translatable as well. And then those softer skills of, communication, thinking things through, those are all really big as well, those core competencies.
Thank you for that, Liz. And I concur. There's so many functions you can learn on the job. So really relying on those soft skills and your transferable skills will really get you pretty far. And you'll even see this shift in the private sector where, tech companies are kind of veering away from the term human resources, and they're using people and culture. So it's about what you can do for people, how you can relate to people, and help them throughout their public service career. So we'll move on to the next question. This is a popular question given our political environment, but will there be HR opportunities even with the workforce adjustment happening / upcoming?
I can try to take this on. This is probably going to be a tougher one to respond to, but it is going to be dependent on the department that you're working in. And I feel like I may have to give a bit of a vague response here because I can't speak for all departments. But one thing that we do know, and I kind of alluded to it in my presentation earlier, is just that it becomes very evident how important HR is through all of these changes. So with workforce adjustment, there is a huge HR component to that. Will there be even more HR opportunities? I can't really speak to that because that would be specific to each department. But we do know that HR is an integral piece of the workforce adjustment process, whether that's through the policy, through corporate resourcing, through the HR staffing or resourcing advisors. There's many different roles that HR will play throughout that process, and the change management, labor relations, of course. So I hope that helps to answer. It's not a very direct response, but it's tough to say because each department's response will be much, much different.
Thank you for that, Laura. Very true. But, Mark Carney did put out a mandate letter, and all of the agencies are working with that one mandate letter. So in order to fill that, there are positions that are going to need to be filled, and a lot of them might be HR. So there might not be a lot out there, but like Laura said, it's very dependent on which agency you have your eyes on.
If I could jump in as well, we've discussed this at my office actually, and we've said like simply, especially with the CR roles and the AS ones, we wouldn't be able to function as to operate our mandate if we didn't have those roles. So they're there to stay. Otherwise, we just wouldn't be able to function.
That is
Do the
true.
job we need to do. So they will be there, at least in some capacity.
Yes, our min roles are the engine that keeps this running. Okay, so the next question we have here, as an HR student aspiring to work in the public sector, would pursuing a master's degree be beneficial for my career?
I can answer this one as well if you'd like. I'll let Luke chime in too since he was speaking on qualifications, but a master's degree wouldn't be essential to work in an HR career. I think time spent learning is never time wasted. So I'm sure it would help to give an asset. I don't think it would be a requirement, but getting a master's degree and the information that you would learn from that, the experiences, of course, it would be beneficial, I think, to have any type of certification, whether that's CPHR, master's, any of that would be an asset to an HR role.
Yeah, very well put, Laura. I'd absolutely just to pile on and add on what Laura said. Like once that I spoke to, those are the minimum requirements, and any job posting that I've noticed anyways. Keep on, I've only been with the public service for 2 years, so I'm very fresh as well. Every job has its own little variations in duties and requirements, so you're never going to find something that's a perfect fit. It's all about pivoting your experiences and your learnings to how you can relate and fill those requirements in the postings. I love learning. I spent ages in school. So I know personally, I'm hoping to go back to complete my master's. But if you do want to complete your master's, time spent learning is never like a waste. And if you can do something that can help improve your skill set, then you will bring that to your position, and that'll help you excel more. Like a minimum is just a minimum. And if you're just looking at purely as a requirement, like on a piece of paper for an entry into a position, maybe that's not the best example. But if you are doing it because you love and have a passion for it, like absolutely go for it. And I definitely think that would be beneficial to getting like a job in the government, for example. Oh, yeah.
Thank you. It's true, it is just a minimum requirement to have an undergrad degree, but you never know, it could be an asset qualification on the job posting you're looking at or the position you're looking at, which could give you a leg up when being considered for a position. Okay, the next question we have here is, what is a good way to figure out which departments are prevalent in your region?
Yeah, I can talk about that one. Alexa did put in the chat the data that we pull from. So there is a website about all the stats in for the federal public service. So you can actually filter, not fully, but you can do the like public population of the federal public service as a whole. You can filter by department, and you can filter by province or territory. So that's where we get, and by we I mean us at the PSC, we use this a lot to figure out where we need to focus our efforts. And also there is a website called Birales, which is managed by TBS, and it shows, it's not the most updated, but it does show you where offices are located. So it can be really helpful if you're trying to find places in like maybe more like remote locations, because it will list all of the departments in a specific city or all of the buildings that belong to like a specific department across Canada. And then obviously like networking is really helpful too. I know sometimes even with this information, like I found out the other day that we have like a really tiny Infrastructure Canada team in Halifax, and there's maybe like 2 people in that office. But you know, I didn't find out through the websites that I use because it's so small. But you know, networking as well can really give you an idea of, you know, of what exists, and that's one of the ways that I've found the kind of the smaller departments that exist or don't exist in my specific region, at least.
Thank you, Liz. That link is very helpful. I did not know it existed. Okay, our next question, a big one too, a hot topic, is how do you envision the future of the government of Canada and its impacts that technology and AI will have on human resources functions?
I feel obligated to answer this one, based on my role. Okay. I think that a lot of people, when they think of technology and AI and the introduction of that into our work, they think of it taking away our jobs. I disagree with that point. I don't think it will take away from our jobs, but I think it will definitely transform them. So I think basically AI is being used so far to date to replace jobs that are very repetitive. There's some robotic process automation, I think, that's happening as well, to take away some repetitive tasks and automate them. But that allows, we're not necessarily taking away the position. I think that we need to keep the skills of the people and skills that only people can do, not AI to date, can do. And we need to focus on growing those skills and working with our people, our employees within the department to get comfortable using it. It's more of a tool. It's not going to replace us. It's a tool that we can use to help us do our jobs and complete our tasks in a more efficient way. That gives us the time in our day to take away from maybe that email sorting or whatever. Maybe that will be automatic. And then now you have extra time to meet with people and connect with Sabrina. And I can give her a shout and meet make different connections at work and that kind of thing. So I don't think it will, I think it will have a large impact, obviously, but it will just transform the tasks that we're doing and it won't replace them.
That is good advice. Thank you for that, Laura. AI is a hot topic, scary and exciting, but ultimately, I think we need to adapt and learn from it. And maybe it is just the tool we need to kind of identify the inefficiencies. Sometimes in government, we have so many established processes and we've had them for so long that the concept of changing them seems like a very tall task. So I welcome AI. My department is welcoming AI. And as long as we are always applying values and ethics when using it, I think we're in good hands. All right, our next question we have here, another hot one, I'd say, if you're on a term, how would you go about networking and finding a role in HR?
I can speak a little bit to this. It is a bit tricky. I have been on 6 months terms for the last 2 years. It has been a bit rocky sometimes. There is some periods where they're like, oh, we might not be able to renew your term. We can give you a slightly different role. I think a lot of what I've done is, I think a huge one is networking. And I say networking. I have mixed relationships with the word networking, but I mean like really genuine networking. I think like I go up to a lot of people because in my office, there's a lot of people with very radically different jobs. And I go up and I say, what do you do? And then if you say that question, they just like jump in and they love to explain their roles and positions because everyone seems to be very specialized. So I like to do that and meet people. I think volunteering for opportunities is a really great way to get your name out and for different teams. Even if it's things that aren't like specifically related to your role, but as long as you have like the capacity and your manager supports that, I would say getting that into your PMA and some kind of training and development plan is huge. Because if your manager or your team lead doesn't know you want to do that kind of transition, like if they don't know, how can they support you in that work? What's another big one? Oh yeah, I would highly recommend going to all the events and the like that are put on externally. So not just through your department, but through things like the like FIN, like the FYN. There's a couple other ones that are centered around. There's mentorship programs as well. So those are really big. I think everything can be found on GC Connects, or links will be sent out at the end of this session. So those are all really big, but just a really big thing is if you can like show value in your work and just express the interest, a lot of people will want to keep you and do really try and move mountains to keep you and get you in the role you want to go into. Especially if you're on kind of short-term terms, which is kind of where I've been stuck in, especially with the last election. So yeah, take that as you will, but that has been my experience. So that's worked for me, and that's kind of what I'd recommend.
I would also add not to be afraid to add it into your learning plan. So speak with your manager openly about that if you are interested in HR, to make sure that you note that in your learning plan. And if any opportunities become available, they may be able to use their network as well to connect you with opportunities that may become available.
Thank you for that. I think considering the political environment, sometimes it could be discouraging, but to be honest, it's the ebbs and flows of government. So we see a lot of shifts in, when and how you land your term or indeterminate. So I think if you stay persistent and you stay out there, like Luke was saying, joining different committees within even your agency also helps with the networking portion. Okay, so we're going to move on. The next one we have here is, where is the best place to find upcoming opportunities? Is LinkedIn a reliable platform? Is GC Exchange good? Any tips about where to find HR roles?
I can answer that if you want. The best place to find HR roles, I would say, is to set up your notifications on the GC job system. Also get familiarized with the department that you're looking at as well. Some may use GC Connects, GC Exchange, and just, I would say, have your notification set up for any and all of those platforms, so that if anything is posted, then you're notified right away and can submit your application. I wouldn't say personally, and I could be wrong, it may just be our department, I don't find that LinkedIn has many official opportunities. There are some people on LinkedIn that are using it for recruitment purposes. I wouldn't count it out entirely, but I would say the most reliable platform is going to be our jobs.gc.ca.
That's a good tip. And I would say further to that, because sometimes applying to jobs on jobs.gc.ca is a mundane task. Really pay attention to the area of selection. So some people are discouraged because they see certain locations in the job postings, but that doesn't necessarily mean you can't apply. What really, really matters is your area of selection. So that will at least indicate if they're looking at applicants from the greater public service or within, a region. So that's usually the first step when I'm looking at jobs. Okay, so the next question is, do you feel that it's valuable to get experience in multiple fields throughout one's career, or focus most time within the same field and truly become an expert?
I can touch on that. I think it really depends on what you want to do. If you are, dead set on a specific pathway, then becoming an expert is absolutely what you should do. I know some people in HR who are very, focused on like a specific domain, and that's their area of expertise, and they can answer anything that you want, but that's because that's what their choice was. If you want to, move up and, be managing multiple different HR disciplines, then you might want to have, a wide variety of experience. I mean, personally, I know very few people who only have experience in one discipline. In relation to HR, I feel like most of the people that I've met that have are PE 4s, 5s, and 6s, most of them have some experience in like 3 or 4 different domains. My supervisor has worked for multiple different departments. They've worked in LR and staffing and other places, other disciplines as well. So I think it really depends. I think kind of like what Laura said, like learning is so helpful. And if you have the opportunity to gain new experienced, it's never going to be harmful. And I know I touched a bit on it, in my slides, where having that other perspective from, a different discipline can actually be really helpful when learning something new. And it can be something as simple as, maybe you bring a lens about change management to, a manager role, and that's going to be really helpful. If you want to go even higher up and we're talking about like EXs, then that would be really beneficial as well. But like I said, I can think of maybe 2 people that I've met that are like, we're super hyper focused and they're more than happy with where they're at, and they are definitely, subject matter experts. But they're definitely a little bit limited in a sense because that's the only place they can go, but they're more than happy with that. So there's nothing, not to say that that's a bad thing. Because I know that they are very happy in their, specific discipline. But I also know that I'd say the vast majority of HR people in the government have a lot of knowledge and experience from multiple disciplines. I'd say the average, if I had to guess, was probably like 2 or 3 disciplines. Like they're not coming in from like 6 or 7 different job opportunities. But definitely, and I think it helped me personally. Like I said, having that staffing foundation for my current role is really helpful because I know all the rules about hiring. And when people ask me those questions, I'm actually able to answer it confidently, whereas some of my colleagues who don't have staffing experience definitely are a little bit more hesitant and can't necessarily give that full answer, but it's not required for the role. So it's not, like an actual like requirement in the poster or anything like that. They can fully do their jobs. I just have this asset, I guess, as you can, maybe describe it as like an asset in a way.
Thanks for that, Liz. The next one, I think we touched a little bit on this, but I'll ask it again. What skills or experience do you find most valuable in new HR professionals entering the public service?
Personally, I would say my top 3 are adaptability, curiosity, and initiative. So adaptability is key. We're changing, as we know, the workplace is changing, HR is changing, our rules change often. So adaptability is key. Things within HR can change based on one policy change, can have an entire effect on the rest of the operations. Initiative, going above and beyond kind of within your scope to bring your skills and your strengths to your job. And then just a general curiosity for HR and wanting to like a mindset of continuous learning or a growth mindset. It's really important.
Thank you. How valuable is the CHRP designation for students aiming to start a career within the public sector?
I can touch on that. From my personal experience, I looked into it briefly for a little while as an option. I just found personally it wasn't necessary. To give like some background, like I'm at the PE3 level, and I've been interested in PE4 opportunities, and I've never seen it. I mean, it would never really be like an education qualification. It could be an asset. I know lots of people who do have it. And even some of them say like, I don't really know if it's required. And it does change provincially too. So if you're someone who wants to consider moving for your job, if you're like, oh, I'm in the regions and I might want to move to Ontario, it might not be worth it. I know here in Nova Scotia, my CPHR, if I got it here in Nova Scotia, it wouldn't be recognized elsewhere. From what I mean, it has been a while since I've considered it, but so I'm not sure if that's like still accurate, but that was one of the reasons why I didn't, because at a certain point I would have considered moving to a different province for a job opportunity, and I was like, why am I going to go through this if it might not even be valued like outside of Nova Scotia, and I want maybe to get a job somewhere else. But I know that I have a few colleagues that have it, and really got a lot of insight out of using it. They do find that it's really helpful, and it does get them connected to a lot of other HR professionals in the region as well, which I think is really helpful. But in terms of like requirement, if you're on the fence or if you're leaning, similar to me, like, I don't really know if I want to do that, then it's definitely not required at all.
I'm in the same boat. I do not have my designation either, and I haven't needed it for my career thus far. But kind of similarly to the master's discussion, it doesn't hurt, and it might give you more information. And if that's something that interests you, then by all means. Our next question is, how can new and young professionals get experience in HR if it's not part of their regular duties?
I can jump in a little bit here. I think really being vocal and telling someone you'd like to do that is really big, because if you don't express it to your manager, or really kind of like, I think really advocating for yourself is probably a better word to say, or a better phrase to say. Yeah, just be your own best advocate. Make yourself known that you'd like to do that. If you can get experiences externally that you have in any kind of, say, like volunteering you do, or community events, so you kind of have some kind of HR experience that you can pivot in. You can say like, oh, hi, I do like XYZ with my group in my own time. I'd love to do more of this in my role. And then your manager or whomever will be able to probably be like, oh, that's fantastic. I didn't know you did this. Like, yeah, we can totally do that. That's been my experience too. So just being your own best advocate, making people aware, and going up to people if you see them around, if you work in the office, going up to people around the office and being like, hi, my name is, well, for me, I would be like, my name is Luke. I'm really interested in your role. Can you tell me more about it? If you ever need help with anything, like, let me know. My manager supports it. So yeah, being your own best advocate is huge. So that's what I would say.
Thanks, Luke. All right, so I see it is 1:56 here. So we are at the end of the session, essentially. So thank you so much for joining us today. I think we do have one more poll session, or one more poll question. So, okay, here we go. So was this session a good use of your time? So this is really going to help the Fin team. We want to know what we can do better in the future, the next career showcase. So I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. Be sure to sign up for any of the other Fin upcoming events. We have other career showcase sessions on Tuesdays throughout July and August. The Fin Network is hosting in-person learning days and future leaders forum across the country throughout the year. We've added new cities to the schedule, and you can find out more if we're coming to near you by checking out the list of cities and dates on the wiki page. And thank you so much again. I hope this was helpful. Please feel free to connect with anyone you find on LinkedIn, or if you want more information, to connect with Fin directly. Thanks, everyone.